Arcade Heroes.
Greetings, it's Adam with ArcadeHeroes.com, and we've got some new game news to discuss today, and this has been up since Monday. I would have made this video sooner, but I was at my other location. The equipment was not quite satisfactory for doing this kind of video, so just gave it a couple of days. Also, to see if Sega would add more info about it, but they haven't at the time of this recording, so let's just jump right into it. Now, I was not expecting this news from Sega, as they have announced this new game called Drone Racing Genesis, and yes, the first thing that popped into my head when I saw that was Sega Genesis, and there was a user on Facebook who made the joke, hey, is this going to be called Drone Racing Mega Drive in Europe? But no, it's Genesis in a different sense. Nothing that I can see from this that has something to do with Sega's famous 16-bit game console. But here it is, the next racing game from Sega Amusements, Drone Racing Genesis, in the twin model. Now, the Sega issued out a press release which provided some details. It's here on the post. I'm not going to read through it, as that's kind of dry and dull, but just looking at the cabinet, you can see how this is unique. I mean, for one, this is the first drone racing arcade game that's ever been done that I'm aware of, and I'm not aware of this existing as a piece of software on Steam or something like that. I suppose it could be, but it looks like this was developed by Sega in-house, so it'd be fully exclusive to arcades. And one thing that I definitely have to give props to Sega for here is doing something different. Almost in a way, this reminds me of something like Hydro Thunder or H2 Overdrive, where I guess you would normally expect Sega to do a car racing arcade game and just keep doing something like that over and over again, but they've taken it in a different direction, and so props to the Sega for that. And the controls here, the press release mentions that Sega did do some testing with this. It doesn't specify exactly what, but I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe tried something like a yoke controller, or it almost sounds like they might have tried a gamepad. So to give you an idea, I have a little mini drone right here, and here's the controls for that. The thumbsticks screw into the analog portions, and then you use that. But it's a dual stick design, and as far as I know, all drones or commercial home use drones out there use that sort of style, and so it's possible that Sega tried 2 joysticks, or they might have tried something like a gamepad. Of course, gamepads generally don't work out in arcades, the Nintendo Super System being a great example of big failure there. But exactly how it controls it and everything, it's not clear at this point. Now, you can see that there are 2 buttons on it. There's a trigger and there's a thumb button. But again, what they do, it's not specified in the press release, but a trigger would seem to indicate that you could shoot, so this might have some sort of combat involved with it. But again, we'll just have to wait for IAPA to see that. And very bright cabinet, can stand out in a nice dark arcade like this. Has kind of the similar color scheme to Daytona Championship USA, although that one had a lot more white in it than this one does. And there do not appear to be any foot pedals. You just have your foot rests there. Reclined seat, typical Sega seat molding here. When I first saw this, I thought that it might be a motion-based game. But it is not, at least this model. Now, that doesn't stop Sega from doing a motion version down the road, which they've done many, many times on their games. Hopping over to SegaArcade.com to see their latest wares. Here's one example. So, ATV Slam, which is their quad racing game, which you can find footage of on Arcade Heroes, or on the channel. here. The deluxe version, which was the first one, was a motion-based platform, but then they released the SD version, I think at the beginning of this year, which has no motion to it. Their Jet Blaster game does have motion, and they had a super deluxe version of Daytona Championship USA that did have deluxe, but I think they stopped selling that a while ago. And then perhaps the most prominent Sega game that has motion on it for racing anyways right now would be Storm Racer Motion Deluxe. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that's coming later, but Sega seems to be taking the opposite way of thinking, or product promotion or product release, that to say like Raw Thrills. As I've recently discussed, Raw Thrills has Fast and Furious Arcade, but that one is obviously a deluxe design, although Raw Thrills hasn't said that. They're not calling it deluxe, they're just calling it Fast and Furious Arcade. But that particular game has a motion base, it has 2 screens and all that. But the problem with deluxe games is the price, and particularly now in the post-pandemic world where inflation's at the worst that it's been for most of our lifetimes, all these factors coming into causing the cost of products to go up and skyrocket in some cases. Something like Fast and Furious Arcade is a very pricey game, and something that for my arcade here I'm not considering just because the price is so high. And now, to be fair, I'm not actually considering anything new right now. When I go to this IAPA, I'm not really going to be shopping at all. I mean, I'll cover everything that I can for Arcade Heroes, but as an arcade operator, I'm just not looking to take on more debt than I already have. But you know, if I was, I would be looking at the more affordable options, and I think that this is something where it'll land this, because one nice thing about just having a joystick controller is those are a lot simpler than a steering wheel, and you also don't have the foot pedals that you have to worry about or any other controls, and so that also should help reduce the overall cost of the game. Whether or not that reduces the enjoyment, I don't know, because again, we just have to play this one to know for sure. But other things that we do know about this game, and here's a promo image that Sega uploaded to their various social media channels after I posted about the press release. And you'll notice that this part of the track here, it looks a lot like the Lakeside Castle course from Daytona Championship USA. And that was one of the courses that they created for that game, although it was really just a reverse or a mirrored track of a Dinosaur Canyon, and it also was retextured and happened in the evening, but just like the sky there and the hill with the trees and just the track, it looks exactly the same, so they might have reused that track or portions of it or some assets from it, not sure. Although when you look at this picture that shows the 4 courses, this game only has 4 per that release. I'm not sure where that might be. It might be in this city one. They call it Metro City, which also is a track in Daytona Championship USA. And I don't know if that's the same Metro City as Capcom's Metro City in Final Fight, but that would be cool little wink wink nudge nudge there. And then you have some sort of snowy mountain course. You have your volcanic cave course with crystals and other forms of things in there, tropical plants, and then you have your tropical ocean seaside course. And you'll notice in each of these photos, except for the Metro City one, that it has these gates that I assume what you're wanting to do is fly through those gates all the time. The press release also does mention something about picking up battery charges for boosts. However, like looking at this particular photo here, it does look like sometimes you can go off on different paths, which is a nice little addition for replay value. So like next time you race that course, you can see what the other direction goes and everything. Like this one looks like it has 2 paths, although this is saying do not enter, so maybe it's just going one way and then it flips around and you go that way. But yeah, those are the 4 courses. And you get 5 drones to pick from, and that's about all we know from the press release on this one. I did ask Sega about how big the screen is, but didn't get an answer. Just looking at this, my guess is it's a 43-inch HD screen. It could be a 47, although it doesn't seem like 47 inches are as common anymore. It seems like they just go 43 up to 55. But I would say that's not a 55-inch one. But yeah, again, I'm very interested in giving this one a try, and I will get video footage. If you have any questions about it, things that you want me to look into, let me know in the comments, and that way I'll be able to ask Sega when I'm at IAPA. But what are your thoughts on this? Would you just want a straight-up racing game from Sega with cars, or are you also, like me, enticed by them doing something different, or do you just not want to see them do racing games? But it's kind of hard. Sega's made their name off of racing games, and that's one thing to also mention. So if you go to the IAPA show map and you go to the Games and Arcade Pavilion, this is where all the coin-operated arcade manufacturers are at, and Sega Amusements International is smack dab in the center there. They're going to be at booth 1010. But when you click on these maps, you can always see if they put a little spiel there as to what they're bringing to the shows. A lot of times exhibitors do not say anything here. They might just have like a website and that's it. But Sega generally does have something. And for a few months now, since I first noticed this, they were mentioning stuff like Jumanji, Men in Black, Mission Impossible, Arcade, VR Agent, all of which we've seen at like Amusement Expo or previous IAPA 2021. But they mentioned two games here. So you have Storm Rider 2 and you have Crazy Rafting. Now, Crazy Rafting, it's already up on Sega's website. It's been there for a while. I've already mentioned this before, and this is kind of like Rapid River by Namco. This was developed by Wallop, a Chinese manufacturer. Has a motion base and the oars that you have to paddle to go down the river. But I'm not able to go out and visit other arcades because I'm always working. So I haven't seen this one out there yet. So IAPA will be the first time that I get the chance for it. But Storm Rider 2 has not been mentioned there yet. However, if we look on Arcade Heroes, the definitive place for arcade news, right? And you'll see this story that I did back in June with this photo that I was sent by Ted H, showing Storm Rider 2 on test over in the UK. And so as you can plainly see, it's a motorcycle racing game, but it has a second monitor on it. I'm not 100% sure what that adds to the game, but it's definitely not a VR game. Like, there's been a few different motorcycle games coming along recently, like MotoGP VR and Ultramoto VR, which are using those headsets, but this one is looking to avoid that apparently. And Storm Rider, the first one, Sega did release that, I want to say 2010, 2011, 2012, somewhere in that range, and that they sold for a couple of years, and it was just kind of Sega's answer to Superbikes too. But it was developed also by that Chinese company Wallop, and although I think this one actually might be IGS, which is based out of Taiwan, and then Wallop picks up a lot of things that IGS does, and then takes that to companies like Sega for worldwide distribution. It gets a little complicated with all the relationships there. But yeah, that is going to also be at IAPA, and so I was definitely not expecting just from this description here to see something else, so I'm glad that Sega did come out with this little surprise and add something extra to it. But since this is motorcycle, this is river rafting, and then Drone Racing Genesis is drone racing, they're not necessarily going to step on each other's toes. But also, again, the nice thing is that you get options for, if you're an arcade operator, as to what you want to spend your money on, especially if that is limited. But yeah, let me know what you think about all this. What are you looking forward to seeing from Sega at the show? What are you looking forward to seeing from anybody else? I mean, the market for arcade racers is definitely heating up again. It's been very cool for a while due to the pandemic, and there have been a few releases, but not a ton. Asphalt 9 Legends Arcade came out at last IAPA and was almost the only new racer around, or like new racer that hadn't been seen before the pandemic started, and so that was able to carve out a good place in the market for itself. But with Sega did have ATV Slam, but that had also been revealed pre-pandemic, as well as Daytona Championship USA and Storm Racer GDX, which is this one here, which you might have seen out there. But yeah, it's just taken a while for a lot of these games to finish their development phase. I should mention again Jet Blaster. Sega's at least had that if you want to do some jet ski style racing or personal watercraft racing, whatever. But yeah, again, let me know what you think about this, what you're looking forward to, what other games you might want to see from other developers out there, and we'll catch you on the next video.